I got to bring one of our team members up here. She's going to hate me for it, and I'm going to get scolded for it, but I have to recognize her. Maria, please. Please. So this little dynamo right here has been is one of the original members of Team Iowa. She started at the very beginning, and she's stuck with me. She keeps me together when it comes to trying to put this on. And this event would not have happened without her help, big time. And let me put it into context. When you don't think you have time, your schedule's too busy, you have too much going on. This lady lost her husband in 2016. 2011, excuse me. 2011. And she raised 9 children on her own and homeschooled them. And let me tell you, it is an amazing. It's an amazing family. And I'm just honored that I feel like I'm part of it. And she's never wavered. Every time, we talk almost daily. And she's taught me a lot, especially when it comes to understanding spirit and faith. And as has the rest of the team, Stacy and Emily and whatnot. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this is the one, and other team members as well. But she's been the one who's made all the details. This place, she said, no, I don't want to go there. We got to come here. And here's the reasons why. And she sold me, okay, I always leave it up to her because she's the hostess with the mostest, all right? That's what my mother used to say. So thank you very much. All right, so I know that we've had some amazing speakers here today. Do you agree? I hope you find this day enriching, fulfilling, enlightening, empowering. There's a whole lot of ease there. But I think the speaker that we're going to finish with today is going to take you on a journey that you probably can't imagine. But when she finishes, you may not even be sitting in your chairs. You may be levitating. All right? Michelle Peterson has a relationship with Cathy, and she said, I can hook you guys up with Cathy on one of your team calls, right, Michelle? And she did. And Cathy spent 2 hours with us on one of our calls. And when she finished, I had tears rolling. Not of sadness, but just joy. And I felt like I was in the presence of an angel. Set up here. Just down here.
Okay.
Tell me if that'll work. Let's hit this. It seems like it's, I don't know. There we go. How's that?
How's that, perfect?
There you go. Speak right in there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, what an amazing group Team Iowa is, and what an amazing group in this room, every single one of you. It's been such a pleasure being here. My name is Cathy O'Brien, and I am a survivor of CIA, MK Ultra mind control. I was used on a White House Pentagon level. I was deep in the swamp among perpetrators who steal elections, use drug and human trafficking across open borders to fund their globalist agenda, and who are using mind control to usher in their slave society agenda that Adolf Hitler first termed the New World Order. We've heard that term from George Bush, Joe Biden, and a whole bunch of self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders that are hell-bent on implementing a slave society plan that would reduce our humanity to align with flat, linear thinking, artificial intelligence. This plan has been going on for a long, long time, and people have been experiencing mind control as a result of their agenda. The formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a classroom, a military, a religion, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. Having been around these perpetrators, I can assure you that they are not like us, and they do not like us. They are a very low vibration, dark, negative energy force that feeds off of dark, negative energy. They feed off of trauma, division, hatred, fear. That's their vibration. That's why we're experiencing so much trauma. Their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit. It's the highest vibration there is, and they can't reach it. They can't get that high. That would be like darkness creeping in on light, and it doesn't work that way. It can't happen. The only thing they can do is use mind control to keep us from thinking to access our strength of human spirit. If they keep us in a constant state of trauma and keep us at a lower vibration and keep our conscious mind frozen in fright, then we can't think to live our life's purpose. We can't think to live the love we are. We can't think to even remember who we are and why we're here at this pivotal moment in humanity's history. Well, the Great Awakening is real. It's happening, and it's going to continue because we've already passed critical mass. But first, we need to understand exactly what mind control is. The formula for mind control was brought into the United States with Project Paperclip when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the U.S. in the wake of World War II. Everyone can research that for themselves and find out how much we didn't win World War II. We just brought it here, and we suppressed it. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. So knowledge needed to be suppressed right away. Truth really does make us free. So censorship became extremely important to suppress the information of what their agenda is really about. By suppressing information, they needed the 1947 National Security Act to cover up their crimes against humanity, to cover up their crimes of eroding our humanity, to fit in with their low vibration, flat, linear thinking criminal minds. They also, in 1947, the CIA was formed to carry out their agenda. So all this is researchable, and we can start to see how important it is for us to understand exactly what their agenda is all about. That formula for mind control is the same. Trauma is the basis of it. And it had been found through Hitler-Himmler research, there is no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while their brain is still forming. That abuse shuts down neuron pathways in the brain. When neuron pathways are shut down, we're more compliant and easily led. Mind control shuts those neuron pathways down. What else shuts down neuron pathways? That's also in the formula for mind control. Sleep, food, and water deprivation. Right now, people are working 9 to 5, 5 to 9 to put food on the table that has no nutritional value because it's been bioengineered and genetically altered to starve our brains, very deliberately, to keep our brilliant minds from firing properly. Water deprivation, that's why chemicals are in our water. It's to dumb us down even further. When we understand that, we start to realize what in the world is going on these days. As for the sleep deprivation, my gosh, people are having to work so hard and then they stay in tension and panic and wondering what they can do next and what's going to happen next and when is the next bad thing going to happen, and all of that is disrupting our humanity, and it's all very intentional. But again, we need to understand we've got the victory within us. We just forgot. Because we have been conditioned for generations to look outside ourselves to big pharma, big tech, big cult-to-cult religion, big government to tell us how to live our lives. When in fact, we've got the answers all along. So it's time for us to reclaim that. I did. And I experienced systematic MK Ultra mind control. I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family in Muskegon, Michigan. My father had been sexually and ritually abused. My mother had been sexually abused and trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. Secret societies is where the secrets on mind control are kept. That's why these secret societies make sure that people are placed in key positions of power and influence because they're wanting them in place to control our society, to perpetuate their globalist slave society agenda. My father's sexual abuse began in infancy before I could think to know what he was doing was wrong. But my brain knew it was wrong because it's the way our brains work. Our brains have this defense mechanism in it where when we experience trauma, the neuron pathways shut down around that trauma and repress it deep into the subconscious mind so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally. Back when we understood our own mind-brain function, we understood that that would happen, and we understood that we could reclaim that free thought, that free will, to be able to open those neuron pathways back up and remember and consciously deal with the trauma. But that information was deliberately suppressed under national security. Our own mind-brain function, our birthright information was being suppressed in order to control us all. This has been happening for generations. My father's sexual abuse extended into child pornography. The child pornography shut down more neuron pathways in my brain, compartmentalized memory of that, and shoved it deep in my subconscious mind. So what was left of my mind could develop and function normally. This was all happening before I could even realize what he was doing was wrong. It's just the way our brains autogenically, automatically respond to trauma. If it's not happening in infancy and it happens through a global trauma or a national trauma such as 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination or the global trauma of mind control masked as a virus 2020 when we all got a taste of mind control, that is how our brains start shutting down the neuron pathways and causes our conscious mind to freeze in fright. If our conscious mind is not in play, then our subconscious mind is wide open to being easily led and manipulated. Because without a conscious mind filter, our subconscious just takes information in. And it takes that information in, and that information then drives our thoughts and ultimately our actions going forward. My father was also trafficking me to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. And that was ever since I was a little itty bitty toddler. And one of the local politicians that I was trafficked to knew that my father had been caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails. This was back in like 1960 in Muskegon, Michigan. And he approached my father and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into the CIA's MKUltra mind control project. My father thought that was a great idea. Well, think about that. That is how long our justice system has been corrupted to allow for the proliferation of pedophilia. It's no wonder we've reached this point now where pedophilia is being openly pushed and promoted within the school system and through every other aspect of life, to the point where child sex trafficking has become about the most lucrative business in the world. And it all happened because we weren't paying attention, because we were being diverted other directions and told not to look that direction, and told that pedophilia is a sexual preference, when in fact it is an absolute control mechanism. This local politician that gave my father immunity from prosecution was Gerald Ford. Same Gerald Ford who went on to become the unelected president of the United States. As Ford's political career escalated, so too did my victimization in MKUltra mind control, until I was used on a White House Pentagon level. After my father sold me into MKUltra mind control, systematic aspects of MKUltra were being imposed. I was taken to various military, NASA, and DARPA installations for mind control programming. I was also ritually abused. My local Catholic church was actively involved with the CIA, because the CIA and the Jesuits had formed an alliance on and combining information on the effects of trauma on the human mind. The Jesuits had long since learned the effects of trauma on the human mind, back when the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition were happening, and they saw the effects of trauma on the human mind and how that actually benefited the promotion of the church. The Catholic orphanages were born because the children were the spoils of those wars. And within those orphanages, they found that further abuse of those children allowed for total control of their minds and helped to perpetuate the whole pedophile agenda by making them the next priests in the church who abused the children, and so it went. I'm not saying all Catholics are bad. There's good and bad in everything. But I'm saying that there was an agenda that was in place, and the effects of trauma on the human mind were combined with the Hitler-Himmler research and what the CIA knew about the effects of harmonics and vibrational frequencies on the human brain to make a more powerful form of mind control. And this was going to be implemented in every aspect of society. In my case, from there, I was taken to what was the Epstein Island of its time, Mackinac Island, Michigan, where I was trafficked to the global politicians who met there to discuss how the fate of humanity, how they could erode our humanity and keep us from accessing the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love, so they could align us with that lower vibration frequency and keep us compliant and under control. At Mackinac Island, Michigan, they were using blackmail videos. All the way back then, I was used in those blackmail videos. They've been going on my whole life. What we're hearing about Epstein Island now is it's been happening forever. I'm glad this information's finally coming to light. But more important than who was involved, we need to know who is holding those blackmail tapes for what purposes. They're using it as a control mechanism. These perpetrators don't trust each other either. So they hold each other by the blackmail, so to speak. So these blackmail videos, these vaults, There's vaults of these blackmail videos in the Vatican. There's blackmail vaults in various places. And we need to understand the globalist agenda that is behind this and realize that now, while we have access to something as important as the Epstein files, that we can use that information to start unraveling this whole tapestry of the New World Order and see who is actually at the top. But first, people need to understand how long this has been going on and what it's all about. At Mackinac Island, Michigan, I met who would become my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd was in office for over 50 years. He held our country's purse strings and made sure that that money went towards a globalist agenda. Senator Byrd was my owner since I was 13 years old, and as my owner, he decided who I would be prostituted to and when, what criminal black ops I would be used in, how I would be used for the CIA cocaine operations, the human trafficking operations across open borders. Every bit of that is part of my life's experience. Senator Byrd was also involved in, by 1984, he had withheld funding from the states to make states more reliant on federal funding in order to bring in the Department of Education into the school system. It took away states' rights, local rights, parental rights of what's going on in the school system so that they could put in their formula for indoctrination of children that was founded on the Hitler's youth formula for mind control of the children in the school system. Our children have been conditioned for generations now on being taught what to think rather than how to think, and that was very deliberate by design. History was rewritten in the school system, and Senator Byrd was behind all of that. He was also had an office in the FBI building, the Hoover FBI building, where he set up the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as a catch-net operation for human trafficking operations. Through that FBI dominance over local law enforcement, it gave them control over all child sex trafficking cases and ultimately control over child protective services. That's how the system became so corrupted. And Senator Byrd was very much a part of all that. The things that I witnessed and experienced under MK Ultra Mind Control on a White House Pentagon level are extensive, and they're detailed in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. Transformation of America was censored under national security, but it was released in book form by clean members of Congress who were determined to arm each other with the necessary facts of the extent of the global corruption that was eroding our constitutional values of freedom and justice for all. So I encourage you to look into that, and access denied for reasons of national security, which reads like a roadmap where the roots of corruption are planted, so that as people are waking up and taking back our sovereignty and restoring justice to our system and taking action ourselves, that we'll know exactly where those problems are. So I encourage you to look into those, because I want to jump fast forward into how I came to be standing here today. In 1988, intelligence insider Mark Phillips, who was working the highest levels of intelligence mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought, knew what was going on. He saw how people like me, innocent citizens, were being targeted for MK Ultra mind control. He saw how our media had been taken over follow the money. It goes to the same handful of puppet masters at the top. He saw how our media had been taken over to manipulate our source of information and tell us what we could know. He saw how media was being used with repetitive media narrative that after 3 times, any repetition becomes, it programs the subconscious mind. And a good example of that is, how many times did you hear on the media 2020 when mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population? How many times did you hear mask up, get the injection, social distance? It was constant everywhere we went because repetition is the most basic form of mind control. And Mark saw that that was being used on the population following trauma, following traumas like the Kennedy assassination and after 9/11. Mark was livid to see our birthright information on mind-brain function was buried under national security. It had been withheld for generations. It had been withheld from the mental health community, from the medical community, and from society as a whole, so that that would make us reliant on looking outside ourselves for answers, when in fact they're within us all along. We just forgot. In my case of being targeted for MK Ultra mind control, it was because the multi-generational effect of the Hitler-Himmler research had found that after 3 generations, any knowledge base, abuse base, or belief system becomes autogenic in the brain. It's passed down genetically. Information gets passed down that way. So if they could promote the pedophile agenda subliminally, like through the Disney cartoons from the beginning, and start slipping that into society, after 3 generations, we would be born more compliant and more susceptible to accepting that pedophile agenda. That generational aspect is something that they were enforcing all along. The generational aspect of MK Ultra mind control was Project Monarch. And it's Project Monarch that has been used on the general population for generations now. By suppressing our information on mind-brain function for generations, we forgot. That should have been passed down information. We should have had our knowledge. That's our defense against mind control. We should have known that the pedophile agenda was eroding, causing a de-evolution of humanity and dumbing us down further and further generation after generation and making us all more compliant. But we forgot that because people became more compliant. It's why more people aren't standing up today, because we've had this generational aspect. Mark saw that happening because he understood the genetic aspect, and he saw how this globalist agenda had been using that and conditioned people for so long. And he was furious over that. He also saw the blackmail operations being used to compromise people in positions of power and influence, judges, politicians, and he knew how that blackmail operation was set up. Mark was so high up in intelligence that he wore any hat. He could be FBI, CIA, NSA, Secret Service, anything he needed to be in key places. And what he saw in those key places was an absolute outrage. He saw little children being taken in and out of the White House, and he knew that he had to do something about it. He wanted to release the information back to people about their own mind-brain function, but he couldn't. He was bound by laws of sedition since he was working in intelligence. So he decided to take action. Mark wasn't the only one in intelligence. He wasn't the only one who was in a position of insight and knowledge who was outraged. There was a strong union of intelligence officers that were determined to bring this truth to light. We had an amazing U.S. Customs official, that William Von Raab, who did everything he could to inform the people of what was happening. He was screaming about the child sex trafficking, the drug and human trafficking across open borders, and he was being censored all the way back in the 80s from the media of getting this information out to everyone. But these people were there all along. They've been trying desperately to get that information out, and it took a huge effort and a combined effort to be able to finally accomplish that goal. How nice now that we have Tom Holman as the ICE director who's been telling us about this child sex trafficking. I had the luxury and latitude of meeting Tom Holman. He is the most compassionate, kind man, and he hugged me with tears streaming down his face in 2023, and he said, when President Trump gets back in, we're going to stop this nonsense once and for all, because he knew, like I knew, what happened 2020 while everyone was sheltering at home and trembling in fear over mind control masked as a virus. When the elections were blatantly stolen in front of all of us, the first thing they did was fling the border back open to drug and human trafficking. They wanted their funding mechanism back across open borders. So we've got good people in place. We've had good people in place for a long time. We have more than ever in place right now. And we can take encouragement in that and realize the media is not going to tell us that. How fortunate for me that Mark decided to take action, and he lifted my daughter Kelly and me out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp all the way back in 1988. That's before people even knew there was a swamp in Washington, D.C., before they knew what mind control was about, before they knew what child sex trafficking was about and what blackmail operations were for. It was so early on, and yet Mark had the fortitude and the latitude and the soul to make that difference. When he lifted me out of that swamp, he handed me keys to my own mind. Mark did not deprogram me. He reminded me of what we've been blessed with all along. He reminded me of that birthright information that's buried under national security. What we need for healing, number one, is safety. Well, by the time Mark rescued my daughter and me, I certainly didn't have any capacity to know that good people even existed in the world. I didn't have any capacity to trust. But my brain knew, just like my brain knew when I was an infant that what my father was doing was wrong, my brain knew that my daughter and I were safe. My brain knew for various reasons, I think, because when Mark rescued my daughter Kelly and me, he also rescued our farm animals. He rescued our cows and horses and guineas and chickens and dogs and cats, because he knew that people who abuse people who abuse children, abuse animals, and vice versa. So he rescued our animals. Well, since I had lost my free thought to mind control completely, it was like losing my free thought with all those neuron pathways shut down. I couldn't think for myself. I couldn't think to save myself or my daughter. I couldn't think freely in any capacity whatsoever. I could only do exactly what I was told to do. Because I lost my free thought, I was blasted into the more primitive parts of my brain where heightened senses are. Intuition, telepathy, vibrational senses. All those were in play very strong. So I could sense, much like an animal could. And when I saw that the animals could trust Mark, then I knew that I could too. So on a sensory level, I was gaining an ability to trust. I was regaining my humanity to be able to begin healing. So my brain, those neuron pathways in my brain that had been shut down for 30 years, suddenly started opening. And as they opened, memory started leaking out and intruding on my past. The past was intruding on my present, and it would just flash. And Mark told me, he said, pick up a pen and paper. You've already survived your past. You don't have to relive it. You don't have to even talk about it because talking about it only reinforces it. He said, write it out. Pick up a pen and paper because the very act of moving a pen activates the logic, critical analysis part of the brain. By activating that critical analysis part of the brain, then it shifts emotionally incomprehensible trauma over to logic where it's written out on paper and consciously seen. All of a sudden, healing is happening on every level, psychiatrically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. It all happens. It all happens because Mark knew, like I knew from experience, Mark knew from mind sciences that without free thought, there's no free will. Without free will, there's no soul expression. If we lose our soul expression, we lose our discernment of truth. We lose our compassion for each other. We lose our ability to align with the divine within and gather that strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. And he knew that all of that could be reclaimed once I reclaimed my free thought. And the best way to do it was through that one simple little brain hack of picking up a pen and paper and writing out my trauma, writing out what I experienced. And as I began writing it out, I told Mark, I said, I can't live with myself after what I was programmed to do under mind control. He said, you are not responsible for what you're programmed to do under mind control. Your abusers are. And they need to be held accountable for their actions. If you want to know who those abusers are, you'll recognize every name in them from the Bushes to the Clintons, and they're in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. And as I wrote out what I experienced and identified those abusers, I was horrified at what the plan was for humanity. I was horrified that I hadn't been able to protect my own daughter. But Mark assured me that since they're the ones that are responsible for that, now that I'm aware, I am responsible for all my actions going forward. I thought, wow, that's a freedom. I'm going to make sure everything I do is true to soul and in line with my life's purpose and is out of love for humanity. After all, love is the most powerful force in the universe. And I realized through that process that I could heal and reclaim that birthright to live the love I am. I sure loved Mark. He was amazing. He was everything any hero could possibly be, and he was so handsome. And I loved him so much, and he wouldn't have anything to do with me. He said, you have to know who you are first in order to have something to give in a relationship. So that was great motivation to heal even faster, and I wrote even faster, was healing as fast as I could because I wanted to know exactly who I am. So I started looking at that, and I couldn't determine who I am based on other people's input. I had that the first 30 years of my life. I had to look deep within myself, and I found myself at the base core energy of my being. And I found that energy as love. People were telling me, well, you have to love yourself. I was like, how can I love myself after all that? And no daily affirmation, nothing was making that happen. But when I found who I am at the base core energy of my being, I thought, well, I'll just live the love I am. That's easier than trying to love myself. So I live the love I am. And once I started living the love I am, love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's the most powerful healing force that there is. And I use that to heal even faster and further. So Mark and I fell in love at that point, and we had the most amazing relationship. And because I had healed from within first, I didn't try to be like him. I didn't mirror and match him. I didn't do things just to please him. I was 100% in who I am. He was 100% definitely in who he was. And we didn't argue. We didn't argue about the things other people argue about. Our lives were on the line. We had a bigger shared life's purpose to be moving forward on. So we didn't have arguments, but we certainly disagreed. And we found that those differences and those disagreements only made us stronger in being able to move forward on our shared life's purpose. As I was remembering and all the perpetrators that I had been tortured by and that I've been exposed to, I did have one important realization that I want to share with you all, because there's so much misunderstanding generated by the media to do a character assassination on our president. And in the mid-'80s, I had to carry out an operation in Atlantic City, New Jersey that happened to be in one of Trump's casinos. And I was told by my handler and by the perpetrators in DC that Trump is not one of us. And by saying that Trump is not one of us, if I encountered him anywhere and I spoke to him, I would be killed, because they feared him. Trump adamantly opposed MK Ultra mind control. He knew that there were MK Ultra mind control slaves like me that were being used by the State Department and used through the Pentagon and on a White House level, and he was livid about it. He was disgusted with the child sex trafficking. He was disgusted with drug and human trafficking across open borders, and he couldn't be compromised. They couldn't stop him. They couldn't mind control him, because knowledge is our defense against mind control, and he had the knowledge. He had the knowledge, he saw it, and he knew what was going on. So they couldn't control him by that. They couldn't buy him off. He had his own money. They couldn't blackmail him. They couldn't control him in any way. So they feared him greatly. And I just think that's an important little piece of the puzzle, because by the time I started healing, my daughter Kelly started to remember too. And in her process of healing, she ended up in the hospital. When she was hospitalized, the Child Protective Services came in with a medical kidnapping, like they do in any situation like that where they're covering up crimes against humanity, and they took custody of her and thrust her into the criminal system that I saw birds setting up. I needed to help my daughter. I needed to get her out, and it was what compelled me to start speaking out. Was love for my daughter, not hatred for my abusers. I started speaking out. Mark and I were speaking out in 1990, trying to raise awareness to help my daughter and affect her situation in the corrupted system. We began speaking out globally. We spoke out for 30 years together, raising awareness on mind control and healing from it. That awareness kept rising. Every time the awareness would rise and the people would say, get us out of the UN, stop this erosion of our constitutional values. The militias would form. Everything else that was happening back in the 90s, some trauma would happen. It'd be the Oklahoma City bombing, Waco, Ruby Ridge, some trauma that would happen, the Unabomber. And then, of course, we all had 911. That was a trauma on the whole nation too, because these traumas would be imposed because it would shut down neuron pathways in the brain. And if people didn't have their knowledge that's their defense against mind control, they would be highly suggestible, easily led and manipulated by repetitive media narrative. That's how we lost so many of our freedoms. That's how we lost so much of our constitutional values. But yet still people were waking up, because truth makes us free, and the truth kept spreading. We were speaking out everywhere. There were a lot of people speaking out, and there were so many that were working to get this information out there. That by 2016, so many of us were awake and aware that we overrode the rigged electronic algorithm to elect a president who was not Hillary Clinton and her new world order. When you read my testimony, which seemed prophetic back in 1995, it reads like a history book now, I detailed every person that they were going to put in the office of president because they had it mapped out. It was going to be kept in the Bush-Clinton dynasties until Hillary Clinton ushered it in 2016. That was the plan. And they did it through the rigged electronic algorithm, the voting machine, because those voting machines have been rigged since their inception. And research for yourself, they went in the wake of the Kennedy assassination while we were all traumatized. That's when they took over control of our country. Well, so many of us were awake and aware 2016, and President Trump went in. It was the most amazing experience to see him expose the globalist agenda, their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking across open borders, to show everybody that there was a swamp in Washington, D.C., what the sexualization of our children was, what's the indoctrination of our children. And it's important to note, too, and since I just mentioned the indoctrination of our children, if we put writing by hand back in the school system, we can stop the indoctrination of our children. Writing by hand was taken out on purpose. Typing on a keyboard was put in. Typing on a keyboard does not do the same thing in the brain. Writing by hand opens neuron pathways, it processes information, and that one thing can help people think again. Writing by hand, each and every one of us can do that. Write out our fear, write out our trauma, write out what's immobilizing us, and then add a solution. And I spell that with an S-O-U-L, solution, because when we do that, we force the brain to fire in new ways again. It lifts us above the storm, so to speak, so we get a clear path forward, and we can see what in the world we can do to make a positive difference. It was so exciting. These perpetrators didn't see it coming. The media didn't tell them either that people were awake and aware. So they weren't prepared for that. So 2020, they went all in with mind control, masked as a virus on the global population, trying to make up for lost time. They used the trauma. They used the masks to limit oxygen to the brain necessary for critical analysis-free thought. Masks depersonalize. That depersonalization of the children in the school system caused identity disorders that were then redefined as gender disorders so that they could take that pedophile agenda into the next level, which is a depopulation mind control agenda. The depopulation agenda, because if they put in the transgender agenda, it stops human procreation. They figured if they lost control of us, they needed to reduce our numbers to a much more manageable size. That plan, including the injections, was detailed in my 1995 testimony, Transformation of America. It's a shame that that was censored under national security, because if that hadn't been and truth had got out, maybe we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in today. But nevertheless, these fools, these flat linear thinkers, this dark, negative, low vibration energy force, they're so stupid. I mean, it really is ridiculous when we understand that they have no business meddling in our brilliant minds and lives anymore. They made a fatal error. They made the biggest mistake of all. They really did. They told us to shelter at home. When you break people's routine patterns, it forces the brain to fire in new ways. Again, mind control shuts them down. And by having a shelter at home, it opened those neuron pathways back up. And we noticed what was being done to the children. We saw the indoctrination. We saw the ridiculousness of the media telling us that the violence on our streets was a peaceful demonstration, and that when we tried to protect ourselves, that was violence. What? People started seeing it. And so that was absolutely horrific. And we'll notice that the first thing they did when they blatantly stole elections in front of us 2020, the first thing they did was open the border to their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking across open borders. So that was devastating to me, and it was very difficult to heal, to deal with that. Well, we've got an opportunity now in front of us. We've got President Trump again. He told us that he's given power back to the people. I had the luxury and latitude of meeting President Trump in 2023, and he was the most kind, compassionate, caring, warm, soulful person with deep concern for us all, and wanting us all to embrace our freedom. And his whole goal is to return the power to the people. How many times he's told us that, and yet the people say, what does that even mean? They don't even know. It means obstacles have been removed from our path. It's up to us. It's up to each and every one of us to take back our lives, to restore freedom and justice, to start protecting our children, to restore the free thought to our school systems, to all walks of life. It's up to each and every one of us to make sure that we have election integrity and that we can restore justice. We've got such an opportunity in front of us. We don't have the obstacles in front of us anymore. We are free to reclaim our constitutional values and start living life the way that it was intended to be. When we look at this mind control agenda and understand that it disrupts our free thought, free will, soul expression, and without that soul expression, we lose our strength of spirit. We understand the mind control agenda is a spiritual warfare. And that spiritual warfare is intended to align us with a dark, negative energy force. We can call it demonic, we can call it alien, we can call it what we want. I know it's a DARPA-generated artificial intelligence linear plan. Wisdom outthinks a criminal mind every time. Mark Phillips taught me that. And wisdom outthinks an artificial intelligence every time. That's why our humanity is under attack. When we have our strength of spirit, we have wisdom. When we have wisdom, we're unstoppable. We have capacity and capabilities that go far beyond their ridiculous little plan. So ultimately, we have a spiritual evolution that we're in right now. And it's up to each and every one of us to reclaim our free thought, to remember who we are and why we're here, to live the love we are, gather that strength of spirit, and start living our life's purpose. We can't wake up for other people because that's a spiritual journey, and everyone has to take that journey for themselves. The best thing we can do is make sure that we align with that divine within and keep living that purpose, not be distracted by the latest trauma, not be distracted by the latest divisive tactics. They are done, they know it, we already won, and they are fighting with everything they have right now, but it's too late. We have the victory. We've been blessed with the victory all along. We all know that. We know who wins. We know where the victory is, and it's within each and every one of us. This is our time. This is our time to shine. This is our time to gather that strength of spirit, live the love we are, and claim our victory once and for all.
All I can say is, oh my gosh. What'd you get out of that? Do you feel empowered? Yes. Do you feel ready to get after it? Right? This is a risen being right here. Enlightened, alive, aware, courageous, all of the things that we have to be. All of us. All of us. It's no time. There's no time for neutral. There's no time for reverse. There's no time for, here's the other thing. There's no time for fear. We cannot allow that word into our consciousness. You heard it from her. We are winning. We are awakening. And they know that. And guess what? They are scared to death. They're losing their grip. And we have to hold them. There's a word that's been missing out of our vocabulary, and the word has to be something that we are talking every day. Not just talking it, but putting it into action. The word is accountability. First, the accountability has to start right here, doesn't it, Cathy? We have to hold ourselves accountable for our own behavior. How do we present ourselves in the world? How do we become more Christ-like? Because when he was dying on that cross, he said, I've done my tour. And I've empowered all of you now to take the mission forward. Because remember, if you've read Scripture, those 12 guys, he said, what I've done, now you can do. And guess what they did? They did it. They healed the sick. They raised the dead. And they all paid the ultimate price for what they did, but they did it. What they've done is they've moved us from here. We have to spend less time here and more time here in the heart. Okay? And that God, the Creator, doesn't exist out there. He's right here. Everything that we need to know and have always needed to know has been put right inside us. So if you understand that, there's nothing to fear. Okay? So I'm done preaching. I'm sorry.